Trump proposes a 50-year mortgage plan as housing costs more. The plan would lower and elongate the monthly payments needed to buy a home. The American dream may have just gotten a 5-decade payment plan. This is from ABC News. President Donald Trump, has suggested creating a new 50-year mortgage plan as a way to encourage young people to buy real estate, according to a post on his Truth Social platform. The U.S. Director of Federal Housing Bill also replied on X. The Director of Federal Housing replied on X saying that the agency was working to institute the new housing proposition. Thanks to President Trump, we are indeed working on the 50-year mortgage, a complete game changer. Well, I agree that it's a game changer for sure. It's a little bit vague on how it's going to change the game. I don't think it's going to change the game in a way that helps Americans. What people don't realize is before the Great Depression happened, mortgages generally were less than 10 years in term, usually around 5 years. And what happened was you put down 50% of the money and it was a balloon payment. So you only paid interest throughout that loan term. And then when it matured, you had to either have the rest of the 50% that the property was valued at or that you owed the bank in order to pay it off, or you had to create another deal with the bank, which is what most people did. You had to refinance. Or you lost the house. Now, most people would just refinance indefinitely, and then the Great Depression hit, and then a bunch of people lost their houses. So the government started meddling in the housing market, and with the New Deal, we got the FHA and a number of different ways that we've sort of regulated home lending. Now, since that time, the price of a house adjusted for inflation, it's done something like 4 to 5 times the numbers. It's multiplied around 4 to 5 times.
It's accelerating.
Yeah, and people can say, well, houses today are way better than they were at that time. They're larger. And sure, you can make the argument that they're larger. I don't think the construction materials are as good, but let's just say houses really are that much better. Well, in the private marketplace, basically everything has gotten better without exploding 4 to 5 times in price. Right. So what happens is when you expand people's borrowing power, they are able to afford a larger house because they're only paying it off in small snippets at a time. And then eventually what happens is you bring prices up. So I'm curious what all of you think about that, if anyone disagrees with me, and how you feel about Trump trying to institute this.
I think the 50-year mortgage is insane. I think that, I firmly believe that we should be empowering people to make good decisions in their lives. I think that a 50-year mortgage is a really bad decision. I think that when you look at the amortization schedule for a 50-year mortgage, like you don't actually start paying principal on these things for like 30 years.
What?
So you get to the 30-year point before you even actually start paying principal. So you're just renting the house. I mean, you don't actually own the house. But Babylon Bee, I had to share this because we published it this morning. One of our headlines is Dave Ramsey in critical condition after learning a 50-year mortgage. And I feel it. This is not one of those things. There are a lot of things Trump does where I'm like, I voted for that. I voted for that. This is not one of those things. It's just like, this just seems unnecessary. It's, we're putting people in worse financial situations. You're not actually owning the home. There's something about passing these things down to future generations and stuff like that too.
It's more debt slavery.
More debt, more people, just the entitled, but American becomes more entitled.
Just to steel man the argument, right? Not that I'm for it, but just because I want people to kind of think about the entirety of the situation. Like, the goal is to get young people into houses that they can afford. And ostensibly, the plan would be you get into this house, right? You start paying for it, and then you refinance at it for a shorter term when you become established, when you financially have more resources, you have a better job, what have you. And I think that I don't think that this is a good idea. I think that this will end up with a ton of bad negative externalities. But I do think that the idea to try to come up with means for young people to own homes is better than doing nothing. And the reason I say that is because right now, young people have no reason to buy into a capitalist society, right? They don't. If you have no assets, you have no money, you have nothing but debt, you're going to look at your situation and you're going to say, capitalism doesn't work.
Yeah.
They're going to say that our system of property rights. I own no property, so I don't
have
care
rights. I have no buy-in.
Exactly. So they have to do something. And again, I'm not saying that this is the proper solution.
If your goal was just to get people into it, and this is true, it's kind of just arbitrary. What stops you at 50 years? Why not do 100?
Exactly.
I mean, you're not going to live in the house in 50 years. You're not. Nobody.
It's not going to last 50 years with the way they're building new constructions.
So it's like, where do you stop it? Is it a 200-year mortgage? It's like if that is really the goal, then 50 years doesn't seem like long enough. Just make it as cheap as possible.
I agree. I just want to, before you jump in a lot, I want to respond to you because I agree that this is probably being approached by Trump and some others around him with good intentions. I certainly don't disagree with that. The problem is it's not like you're going to be taking housing costs where they are and spreading that over 50 years. People are going to have more purchasing power, so the houses are going to get more expensive. That's the issue. And people are going to feel as if they can afford the house when it actually is truly unaffordable for them because it's spread out over such a long loan term. And then on top of that, you're not going to get the much needed market correction of housing coming back down in price, which is difficult for the economy in the short run. But if we want young people to be able to buy into the economy, to have houses, to own property, it's necessary. And this would only stave it off. We would just be throwing a Band-Aid on the problem that would make young people debt slaves instead of giving them the opportunity to purchase houses at a more reasonable loan term at a more reasonable price. But Elaad, you were going to say something.
Yeah, so I'm a neocon and not an economist, but so maybe one of you guys can correct me. But it highly depends on what the interest rate will be, right, for these 50-year mortgages, because it's different for those versus like a 15-year mortgage, right?
Yeah,
so if it's super low of an interest rate, hypothetically, I think it could make more sense. I don't know if we'll ever. I don't know if
property taxes
2% is
also
a pipe dream, but a decade ago they had 2%. Interest rates on some of these 15-year mortgages, I believe. So if they could get them that low, then I think they could make sense. Otherwise, I generally agree with you guys.
Property taxes are also robbery. I mean, in New York, New York, before we left, it was like 18 grand for like 2 acres in upstate New York, right?
It's insane, dude.
It's insane.
You're getting taxed on your income, and then you're having to buy a house, and you pay tax when you purchase the home, and then you're being taxed continuously every single year on the purchase that you made with tax money. I mean, it's insane.
Sickening. One thing I'll say, and here's where I'll disagree with you a lot. Let's say that you do have a very low interest rate. That carries with it, even though there's less. Even though that sort of solves the problem of the person being a slave to the bank with respect to how much interest they're paying over the course of the 50 years, it exacerbates the problem of them having more purchasing power, because the lower the interest rates are and the more purchasing power you have, the more the market is going to skyrocket. So even if you're only paying 2%, houses would just explode in value because of that.
Yeah, money would be cheaper.
Yep.
Therefore, people would demand more of it.
It would be inflationary too.
Yeah.
One thing on property taxes, as I understand, local governments are largely funded by those property taxes and wouldn't have anywhere else to like siphon that money from. So while I largely disagree, like I'm pissed off if I'd have to pay property tax. I rent. But like that's what it goes to funding.
Also, I think
and that's like most of these public schools are funded.
Public schools, which are an issue.
Sure, but I mean,
I don't want to fund public schools.
To public schools. And
the other thing I would say,
that's how the system is set up.
Just to respond to you too, I mean, I'm not a banker, but I believe that the way the whole system is set up is that the shorter the term, the lower the interest rates, not vice versa. I don't believe that these would have low interest rates.
Yeah.
I think these would have higher interest rates than 30-year mortgages significantly.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because you just hide it in the term.
Well, and then because also you got to consider the bank is saying, I am giving this money out for 50 years. In order to be able to keep up with inflation across that time period, they would need a massive interest rate. So I think it would just be an insanely high interest rate. Yeah, I don't think it would be a good situation. And what you mentioned about property taxes funding local governments, this is part of the issue with the way our system's set up today. It's completely upside down. In theory, the way things should be is your highest tax burden should be for your local community, and it should not be that high. It should probably even be lower than it is now. But the idea that the majority of your taxed income goes to the federal government is completely insane. Like, realistically, your tax money should be going to the things in your immediate vicinity that actually improve your life to a measurable degree. And then the people, hundreds of miles away in Washington, they should be getting like maybe pennies on the dollar with respect to how much you're taxed. Maybe, if that, a penny on the dollar for those functions. But of course, it's completely backwards. You're working something like, 1 out of 5 days out of your work year just for the government. So 1 day out of your entire week is literally just for your federal taxes. It's backwards. It's totally upside down. totally upside down. But I'm curious, does anyone have anything else to say about this issue before we move on to another story here?
So are you going to buy a crib with the 50-year?
No, but I'm thinking I want to finance as much as possible with the 50-year mortgage, and I'm actually waiting for the 50-year Uber Eats loan so that I can just start putting those payments off.
Down payment on dinner.
Exactly. I think what we should do is we should have an economy where people are in debt as possible for as long as possible. What do you think, Phil?
I think that anything that the federal government does to try to alleviate the suffering of young people, the economic suffering of young people right now, is a good thing for the country, because there are so many people that no longer believe in America.
Yeah.
Young people do not believe in our system. And it is because of the behavior that the banking industry and the government has had for the past 15 years. Ever since the 2008 crash, the government has been, and actually no, before that, but it's become acute since the 2008 crash. The government has behaved incredibly irresponsibly.
I completely agree.
And so we have to do something as a society, like our government has to do something, because they're the ones that have the levers of power. They have to do something to make sure that young people have a reason to buy into America. There has never been a generation that believes in America less, believes in our system less, and so we need to do something to ameliorate their problems, to help them, to give them a reason to believe in America.
I'm with Phil. Like, I don't agree with this policy, but I know people can't afford houses right now. They don't think they can have a family, and there's just widespread suffering. So I want to see those people get help, and getting a house could help you build a community and all those things.
The other thing, though, is, I mean, I agree that we should be making efforts to make things easier on young people to live the American dream. But, like, here's a 30-year mortgage versus a 50-year mortgage on a $410,000 house. 6.5 interest rate on 30-year, $3,200 a month payment. 7% interest on a 50-year is a $3,088 a month payment. So, I mean, you're $120 a month. That's not
for 20 years of your
20
life.
years extra
20
of your
years
life.
of your life to be owned by a bank, dude. For like $200 a month, it's insane. It's insane.
Nuts. That's not helping the person. That's
No,
not.
the policy's not.
It's
gonna
not.
help.
I want the 3,000-year mortgage.
Yeah, let's do. Here's what I think should happen. We should do a generational mortgage, the 3,000-year mortgage. We'll call it the millennia of the mortgage. And what'll happen is you'll borrow it from the bank, and if you can't pay it off and your descendants can't pay it off, by the time you're dead, they'll just upload your brain into Neuralink, and you'll work on spreadsheets for a couple millennium for like $75 a week until the loan is eventually paid off.
Yeah,
Better than the system in China, which allegedly is, I think you can only do 99-year leases on land, and not even the property.
You don't own any.
So at least we still have the property rights here.
You could do a 99-year lease.
On the
If you
land.
don't pay your property taxes, you don't actually own it. They take it away from you, so you don't actually own it.
Yeah, but I mean that to
have an
be
eternal
to be,
lease.
to be fair, just again, so we're everyone's on the same page. Property taxes are not a federal thing. Property taxes are state by state, so it depends on what state you're in,
Yeah.
and the amount that you're going to pay depends on a lot of things.
New York is way more than West Virginia.
Yes, way more. Consider.
Yeah, but I mean,
Thankfully.
West Virginia compared to New York, I mean, the services in New York are a lot better than.
But
I'm talking about upstate New York. West Virginia is a lot better than New York
But again, now this policy might not be the
what
right
way?
solution.
in every way.
Every way.
not in per capita. I mean, to begin with, not in income per capita, at least.
In
This is one of
terms
the poorest states,
in
actually.
terms of freedom, it's a great state.
I like that.
Well, and
Free to have no money.
DeSantis is suggesting that we take away all property taxes, which would be great. I don't know how we'll keep police officers around, but
Oh, I mean, it'll just be sales tax, or it'll be state income tax or something like that. You don't have to have property tax in New Hampshire, where I'm from.
Right.
You don't have, like, my property tax is quote unquote high. It's not actually high compared to like Massachusetts. I have like 50 acres, and I pay a few $1,000s more than my mom, who has like not even a full acre. But
Wow.
the point is, like, in New Hampshire, there's no sales tax, there's no income tax, but the property taxes are high.
Right.
So the government will get the funding. State governments will get the funding that they need to function somehow. And some people will say, hey, maybe a sales tax or an income tax. Personally, I think things like sales tax and consumption tax are the best of a bad
agree.
options, because if you didn't have property tax, then you actually do own your property. The government can't take it away without going to court or what have you. And then I think that an income tax, a state income tax or a federal income tax, I think that those are bad, because they're literally taxing you for generating economic activity. Whereas if you have a sales tax, when you can decide not to engage in
Exactly.
in exchange. But the point, I think the broad point that I want to kind of push on again is the government has to do something about the fact that there is an entire generation, like not kidding around, like a whole generation. You think that millennials are fond of socialism? There's even Gen Z, the people on the right are fond of socialism, right? They'll be right leaning, but they're going to be national socialists, right? They're going to be nationalists and socialists. They're going to say the government should take care of us, and maybe the government should take care of only people that look like me. But it's still the government.
Shane
should
is
take
always
care
saying
of.
to me, just nonstop. He's always telling me that.
Don't leak those texts, okay?
He says he says only people who look. He's like says only people who look like me, but I'm quoting him literally. He's
Only the
pointing at
Irish.
me.
Only the
He's
Irish.
like only people like you, Seamus. Only you should be cared for by.
Well,
the
another thing that will help that, just not to stay on this story for too long, but another
it's
thing
very
that will help
important,
that
so
is,
stay as long as you
immigration affects this significantly too. I mean,
Yes.
a lot of the people who are taking these FHA loans and things like that and getting into houses and driving the cost of homes up are not Americans.
Yeah.
So there's two things that you can do. You can limit immigration the way that you're actually supposed to enforce our border, get the people out of here that aren't supposed to be here. B, something that I would be strongly encouraging would be to bring down our debts and to make things more affordable for people is if you have foreign interests owning land in the United States, they should be taxed at a much higher rate.
I would totally agree, and I like what you were saying, Phil. I tend to agree that a consumption tax, tariff, things like that, where there's actual economic activity occurring, which is then taxed, makes more sense to me than taxing someone based on how much wealth they have, because frankly, we tax people based on how much they earn, but the amount that you earn doesn't actually say all that much about your lifestyle. It's a question of how you choose to spend that money. So if you have that money and you're behaving virtuously with it, you're saving it or you're investing it instead of going out and, indulging in luxuries.
You should have the freedom to do that.
Yeah, I completely agree. So I think it's bad to tax someone just for having the money. I think it's crazy. But even though I think it's bad to tax the money,
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.